For these responses, I see decreasing corruption, greed, taking away government need to issue currency, global reforestation, more skepticism, and giving everyone food, clothing, shelter. What can we accomplish as humanity when no one has to worry about those? These are questions that, for me, in my perfect world, we'd be asking these questions all the time. And when I showed up to start working in Cardano, it felt like this was a place where we were talking about questions like this. And the last few weeks haven't felt like that. And I've just been trying to reflect on why, because capturing that, to me, it's clear that the world is changing. I thought 5 years ago that Cardano would be a force for good in that change. And right now I'm as uncertain as ever if that's going to happen. I do have some answers to this question personally. Here's 3 things that brought me to Cardano in the first place. I'm a teacher, and it's trite, and you've heard this before, but I take this question very seriously. If I could change the world, we would live in one where education was funded as generously as war. It's not. You can look up any number of numbers to back up this point. I'm hoping we can shift the scale on that a little bit. Infrastructure. I want it to be easier and more likely that we fund public goods. A few years ago, a few years before I jumped into working in Cardano, there was a famous story here in the United States about a bridge that collapsed, but then there was just argument and stalemate over how to fix it and whether we should fund infrastructure projects. And then what really kind of ties it all together, and for me, the reason that the financial implications of blockchain are really interesting, is that I think we can build a world where honest work gets honest pay more often than it does right now. And the question at the core of that, for me, is how can local communities capture more value for the work they do, right? I know, for example, in the small city where I live, construction projects usually go to bidders from far away. And a lot of wealth is captured from my particular community by people who don't live and don't have the same level of kind of personal investment in participating as I do. So these are 3 problems that have always been on my mind. And when I think about let's change the world, usually what I'm thinking about comes back to at least one of these. And so when I've been thinking about what Cardano feels like lately, I have to think about it in the context of these 3 problems. How are we doing on these 3 things? And the reason I'm struggling right now as a member of the Cardano community is, first, I haven't seen these changes, right? I've been working on the education side of Cardano for the last few years. It still doesn't pay. No surprise, right? Like this, it's been really hard to build up a sustainable life by focusing on teaching. And Gimbal Labs has taught a lot of people who have gone on to do a lot of things, but we never figured out a business model for that, right? And we always felt like we were competing with founding entities to deliver education where collaboration would have felt a lot better. Infrastructure. There's a Blink Labs proposal to build an alternative implementation of a block producing node called Dingo. And reading DREP responses often sounds just like the kinds of discourse that happens in US government around infrastructure funding. I haven't had time to do some background research. I should probably set an agent on this. And if anybody wants to do an analysis, how do people in US Congress talk about infrastructure And how are D-reps talking about funding infrastructure, for example, a new node? To me, it feels like the Cardano treasury should be for things like building more infrastructure, making sure these tools are widely available, resilient, and we don't have a monopoly of nodes. But it's been a little bit heartbreaking to see that the same debates followed us across. And honest work, similarly, I wanted to work in blockchain, right? And I think I didn't want to spend time on Twitter. And I think that's what we've got is we've got infrastructure that is no different from the world as it was before blockchain. Nothing has really changed. So right now, I think there's still a lot of work ahead, but I think we can be honest about, changing the world doesn't happen magically. It's a nice marketing phrase. We know that Charles is great at marketing, but when it comes to actually making this happen, it's day to day, and sometimes it's boring, right? So this is what we get to start looking at today. We built Andamio in part because of these problems. There are several other Andamio founders here on this call who have their own answers to these questions, their own motivation, but we've found enough alignment with each other that we've built Andamio for a lot of these reasons. And the moment I think we're really in, right, is that, yeah, changing the world, big picture outcomes, achieving some of the stuff that we named right here. These are good problems and we should be focused on them. But in a day-to-day way, we wake up every day and we choose something to focus on. So there's a couple things we'll be looking at as time goes by. We have a new version of Andamio CLI to play with. We've updated the API to make it easier to use. And coming soon, we have a new little experiment called Cardano XP. It looks like this. And the only reason I'm showing it to you right now, it's running locally. It'll be deployed. But this is an app that was vibe coded in about 3 hours on top of Andamio using the tools that we're going to learn about here. And we'll go deeper into how this was built, right? But what you see right here, this is a tiny experiment that focuses on one problem, giving feedback and compensating people for the trouble of giving feedback. I know that it's hard to get feedback. It takes time to give feedback. And as a developer, there's maybe nothing more valuable than hearing from somebody using a tool, their feedback about how to improve it. And when I think about the current status of Cardano and all of the work so many people around the world have done, that there's really no on-chain record of that. This is a problem I'd like to play with. So if that resonates with you, that's a project that we can start looking at as an example. And it will be deployed sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we can have some fun putting it out there. But the big idea here at Pioneers is that now these tools are available, and each of us can figure out new ways to be using them. So that should get us into today's session. The next thing we have is feedback review, what we do at the start of each session.